In a world where hustle culture collides with wellness warnings and workplace demands keep evolving, how do we stay sharp without burning out? How do we navigate the endless stream of wellness trends while actually getting results? This is the Work and Wellness Podcast, and I'm your host, Ange Davis. Drawing from my own journey of wins, stumbles, and honest revelations, I'll be bringing you raw, unfiltered conversations with experts and inspiring guests who've been there, lived it, and found a better way. Together, we'll cut through the noise and workshop what it really means to be well in today's workplace. No more choosing between success and sanity. No more sacrificing health for achievement. Whether you're struggling with burnout, searching for purpose, or simply ready to work smarter, not harder, you're in the right place. This is real talk about real solutions for real people. Let's get into it. The information in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Any opinions expressed are those of the speakers and do not take into account your personal circumstances. You should always consider whether the information is appropriate for your situation and seek independent financial advice from a licensed professional before making any financial decisions. Hello, friends. Welcome to the show. Today, I am so excited to welcome our guest. We're going to be talking about a topic that's really close to my heart. That is financial wellbeing. We've got Barton White here, who's a seasoned financial advisor with over 13 years of experience in the financial advice profession. Bart specializes in providing trusted financial advice and strategic guidance to entrepreneurial families, business owners, and professionals. He's known for his calm, thoughtful approach and acts as a trusted partner to his clients, offering robust financial strategies and serving as a sounding board for key business, family, and wealth decisions. Bart's passionate about helping families and business owners prepare for succession, empower the next generation, and confidently navigate complex transitions. I love financial wellbeing, as you all know, and I can absolutely attest to Bart being a very calm and thoughtful person in this space. I love chatting with you, Bart. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. That's a very, very warm welcome. Thank you.
I always like to do people's intros with them there so they can get a little bit of a hype up before I chat to them. But it's very true, and I love chatting to you about all things finance. I want to start just at the beginning about financial wellbeing, and it really is about more than money. How do you define financial wellbeing, and what role does it play, do you think, in overall life satisfaction?
Yeah, so to me, financial well-being is about more than feeling confident and in control of your money than just having it. Okay, so some people feel that it's just around having money. I think it's more about having some confidence and control around what that money can do for you in the future. It means knowing you can handle surprises, knowing that you can still enjoy what matters to you most in the future. And it needs to support all the important relationships in your life and give you peace of mind.
Such a good definition, Bart, because I think a lot of people think financial wellbeing is just having money in the bank or earning a good amount of money. And I've certainly seen in my time in banking, people have plenty of money, but they don't have a level of financial wellbeing because they're not aware enough about how they can use it. It's almost fearful, like they keep it in the bank because they're worried it's not going to be there anymore.
Yeah, sometimes there's a bit of a scarcity mindset in there, which can be bit harmful with, long-term goals and achieving, a great deal of confidence for the future. Sometimes we can be guilty of wanting to just hive money off to the side and worry about it rather than have your money work for you as a fueling mechanism for your goals for the future.
It's such a clear mindset shift, isn't it? I think about, my parents' generation, and this is not true of all of them, but I think in general, it was a lot about saving for a rainy day, that money under the mattress mindset.
Yeah.
Whereas I think we speak a lot more about wealth generation and making your money work for you, I think there are a lot of people who feel stressed and anxious about money, particularly at the moment. There's a lot of talk around, cost of living and all of that sort of thing. From your
Yeah.
experience, what do you think are some key mindset shifts that can help people feel more control over their finances?
So the first would be around focusing energy and attention on what we can control and
Mm,
not to things that we can't control. So we can control what our habits are. We can control what our plan is. We can't control what investment markets will do or, rules around tax and change like that. We just need to direct our energy to what we can control. I think that's the first one because
mm,
it can feel very overwhelming when we're thinking about all of these elements which we really have no influence over.
mm,
That's the first part. Um, I think there's a mindset shift in there around, some people have a sense of, I need to have it all right now,
mm.
right? And the shift could be, I'm building something meaningful for our family over time.
Yep.
Okay. Um, and then another one that I think is a good thing is to maybe see money as a tool to support our values rather than as a measure of our worth. So it's a funding mechanism. It's not the whole why are we here? What are we doing this for?
That's such an important one, I think, Bart, because I think a lot of people, and I don't know if you've heard of the book, The Psychology of Money, it talks a lot about that, is that people get money to buy things to make them look like they're wealthy, but in the process, they're no longer wealthy because they've spent their money on things that actually are not necessarily aligned to their values, but rather things that they think society values, which I think is a really important mindset shift.
For sure.
And you mentioned control earlier as well. I'm a big believer in self efficacy. Like I think there are a lot of things in life we can't control, but if we can control our own things that we can control, then, it gives us more will and purpose in life. Otherwise, you can almost feel like you don't have any power over the way you proceed.
Yeah, that's scary, right? So
Mm,
if everything in our life feels out of control, that's where stress creeps in my opinion. So the more we can lean on elements that are in our control, where we
mm.
spend our time, what our habits are, I think the more we can take some comfort in where we're going into the future.
For sure. And I think in turn that helps our well-being, right? Because you don't have that lack of being in control. I mean, look, we can't always control the outcomes, but we can control our inputs in certain situations. And I think that certainly helps our well-being. You work really closely with individuals and families over the long term. What are
Uh-huh.
some of the common habits or behaviors that you see in these people who achieve that financial stability and peace of mind?
There's a few things that come to mind there. So um, some of my really successful clients that are very good over the long term, they really want to understand their numbers, right? So
Mm,
some of the things they want to understand is how much income do we need to produce as a family to achieve our goals, right? I want to know what my target is. I don't want to have to exceed that and put
mm,
other elements of our life at risk. I want to know what our number is so that we can have that form part of a full life. So we've got
mm.
time for experiences with the family as well.
Yeah.
Um, they want to understand how much they need to be directing towards, paying down the mortgage, putting away some money for the future from an investment standpoint, that sort of stuff. They want to
Mm,
understand where all their money is being allocated and why, right? So
yeah.
they just want to know their numbers because they understand how if they have that awareness and that knowledge, that puts them in a really good place to work towards achieving their goals for the future.
Mm,
Um, some are really good at automating good behaviors, like setting up regular savings plans for investments, that sort of stuff. The sort
yeah.
of things that happen behind the scenes where they don't actually have to think about it, and a lot of good behaviors will occur and good results over time if we set that up in an automated fashion.
Mm,
Um, a lot of our clients want to surround themselves with the right help to get the right outcomes, right? So that's the right professional team around them. So advisors across, their financial game plan through to their accounting needs, business coaching, etc., etc.
mm,
Um, I think I think our clients are very good at knowing, that they don't need to know the answers to all the questions. They just need to know who to surround themselves with and ask the right questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, some regular check-ins about, are we on track and is this game plan working for us? Constantly checking in on a quarterly or monthly basis about, is this still working? Is our plan still appropriate? Have our goals changed? Are we heading in the right direction? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so important what you say there, Bart. I mean, knowing your numbers, I used to see this when I was in the bank, is people sort of tend to bury their head in the sand a little bit. It's like, if I don't look at it, then it doesn't exist and it doesn't matter. I love how you talk about, and you and I spoke about this, is knowing your number, knowing what number you need, whether that's to have on a monthly basis, yearly basis, but then also what number you want sort of what as you head towards retirement. I
Yep.
actually think that's such a powerful concept, because otherwise we tend to work towards this thing, continuing to try and earn more, do more, accumulate more, and it might not actually be getting us to our goal. Either it might not be enough, or sometimes people could also be working too hard, if that makes sense. And they might actually be able to dial back how much they're working and invest more time in their family and their relationships as well. So I think knowing that number can be really, really helpful for people. And it's certainly something that got me thinking about how you can better know your number. The other thing I love that you said was automate your habits. So, for example, I have automated share investments that just come out every month. I don't have to think
Yep.
about it. And I think the more you can automate those really good financial habits, the less you have to think about it, but it's preparing you for your future as well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing that? Is that something that's been in practice for some time now?
Yeah, so I guess since starting working for the banks, like we got given
Yep.
shares every year, and that just piqued my interest. And then this is not sponsored at all, but I worked for Combank when ComSec Pocket was launched.
Yep.
And I just think that's a super handy tool personally for me. It breaks it down into 10 ETFs that you can invest in. And I've got my other share portfolio, but I think having that automated just makes it super easy.
Oh, yeah. It's an underrated piece of tool that we can add to our, toolkit. I think it makes a huge difference, and if it's manageable amounts, we don't really notice that it's gone. Yet
Mm.
the long-term compound effect is hugely impressive. So, it is very underappreciated.
Yeah, I think so as well. And like you said, if it's manageable amounts, you kind of, I mean, you'd spend it on 2 dinners or whatever, like in a month. So, it doesn't make too much of a difference, and it's already gone. I don't even see it come in.
Yep.
I think, speaking of that, I think there's often pressure to keep up financially. I think it's worse than ever with things like social media, where people are constantly showing all these things that signal wealth. They don't equal wealth, but they signal wealth. And things like home ownership, investment trends, all that sort of stuff. How do you suggest people focus on their own financial goals without feeling overwhelmed by those external expectations?
This is this is a ongoing conversation nowadays. Um, in my friendship circles to clients that we deal with, and then you add in the social media overlay to this. So there's a really good saying that I'm a big advocate for, and I've probably told most of my clients this one, some of my friend group, is that comparison is the thief of joy. Right? So while ever we're comparing where we're up to versus our friends or what we see on social media, there's no happiness going to come there. Right? We're all on a different journey. We're all, our own race. So the first thing is probably just to acknowledge that let's not compare. We're all on a different trajectory. We're all going different places as well. Right? So I also like to help people define what success looks like for them, right? Because no matter what your neighbor or your friend is doing, your version of success is likely different to that, right? So don't measure to what all of those external factors. Let's measure back to, where do we want to go? What does a
Mm.
great life look like for us? Um, I'm an advocate for an accountability coach in here at times when we feel like, we're getting distracted, or we're starting to worry about some of these other factors, about, someone friendly that you've given permission to say, have some of these conversations with, and say, right, here's how I'm feeling, let's talk it through. I think there's a lot of benefit that can come from that. Um, I really encourage everybody to celebrate progress, not perfection.
Mm.
Right? If we just wait to celebrate to the very end once we've achieved the goal, we've missed out on a lot of joy along that journey, right? And small wins build momentum, and they do help us get where we're trying to go. So I think there's a lot to be said for, bringing it back again to focusing on what we can control, but also setting aside time to reflect on the progress we've achieved. Often we're all so busy and running so fast that we can often achieve a goal or a material milestone, but we're moving so quickly that we don't enjoy or celebrate or reflect on what that journey's been like.
Yeah, I think we do it in a lot of things, not just finances, don't we, Bart, as humans, at work
Yep,
or in life, you achieve something and then you just on to the next thing without pausing and reflecting to celebrate. And like you said, you rob yourself of a lot of joy when you don't take those moments to pause and reflect, I think.
for sure. We're all doing incredible things on a daily basis, but it's very rare that people set aside the time to reflect. And life is busy, so um, being purposeful and carving out time to do that, I think,
Mm.
is a huge opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also think taking time to sit, like you said at the start, and figure out what is a rich life to you. There's a Ramit Sethi. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's an American financial advisor. He's got a book, but he talks about what your rich life is, and that will be different from everyone else. Like your
Mm.
rich life might be going on holidays. Someone else's might be a house. Someone else's might be clothes. Whatever it is.
Yep.
But taking some time to figure out what that actually is for you as an individual or as a family, just to bring yourself back on track and have that sort of check bearing, because I think it's so easy to keep getting pulled off track with all of the external noise that if you have that anchor to come back to and check in, whether it's a monthly financial date or whatever that looks like, to be like, are we still working towards that? And is that still what a rich life is for me or us?
Yeah. And then there's the opportunity to make, decisions on an ongoing basis around how does this purchase or this decision help me get closer to or further away from those things that give me that rich life.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you put a number on those purchases? Is it like any purchase over $500 you take a note, or like it's just in general that you think about that?
Uh, I'm more of a generalist rather than a limit or a cap.
Mm,
Um, I think that's a bit of a person by person sort of scenario.
yeah.
I have seen that putting those caps or limits on when we do those sort of thinking on certain transactions or purchases as to be hugely favourable. And
Mm,
then there's others that naturally gravitate towards just going in general, does doing this help me get there?
yeah. Yeah, that's fair enough. I think for me, a cap helps. I told you when we caught up, I love to shop, but so a little. I mean, I'm very considered. I certainly am not an impulse shopper. I'm very considered. I'll always like let it sit with me for a period of time. But yes, I think sometimes I sort of in my mind, I think anything over 500, I like to take a sort of check bearing and be like, oh, is this really something that's sort of getting me towards my goals or that I've allocated funds for or whatever that is.
How did you land on that number? Was that just a number that works for you guys, or where did it come from?
It's just
Or is it just a
something
nice round number that
in my
works?
gut, like I think,
Right.
a couple of $100, for a new pair of runners if I need them for the gym or whatever. But I think anything over 500 for me feels like a substantial purchase, and
Gotcha.
so that's just me in my gut, my mentality. Anything over 500 is something substantial, whether it's a new iPad, even for work or whatever that is. I'll just take
Hmm.
a moment to really consider it.
Hmm. I think there's a good lesson in there, a good rule in there.
Yeah, I find it helpful personally.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of economic uncertainty at the moment. We've seen it.
Yep.
Like, if anyone checked their shares in the last few months, they would have gone down and back up and would have been a bit chaotic. How can people build financial resilience so that they feel prepared as you can, because we can't predict
Hmm.
the future, but so that they
Hmm.
can feel prepared for what comes next?
Part of that is in mindset around
Mm,
just knowing that things will move around, right? There's going to be times where markets are moving, that sort of stuff. There's going to be times where unexpected bills arrive,
Mm,
right? Whether the car needs something material fix required or something like that. This just that's what life is. So
yeah.
a good one is to really just keep a cash buffer. Just
Mm,
keep some money in a separate bank account, different to the living day-to-day bank account. It's just peace of mind that, if something doesn't go to plan or, we have an income drop or whatever that may be, that we've got access to some monies to some peace of mind.
how much do you recommend, Bart? Is it? I've heard
Yeah.
different numbers over my time. I've heard, 10% of your annual salary. I've heard 3 months' wages. What do you
Yeah.
have a guide on what you think people should have aside?
We do sort of have a conversation with our clients one-on-one around what their specific circumstances are and what their goals might look like.
Mm,
Um, I've seen clients utilize, having 12 months worth of living expenses as a
mm,
as a goal,
yeah,
right? So what's the mortgage cost for 12 months? What does it cost in all of our day-to-day living costs? Have that hived off in a separate bank account,
yeah.
okay? Um, at a business lens, I've seen business owners seek to build up a cash reserve around that 3 months of operating
Mm,
expenses, right? It has the same effect.
yeah.
Um, then you would overlay the client-specific circumstances over that, whether they have maybe a higher need on top of those guides, or whether we would feel comfortable with a lesser based on their unique situation.
Mm. I think that's good. And I really like that you say 12 months worth of living expenses because I think that might come as a shock to a lot of people, Bart. Like, I think there would be a very small percentage of the population probably who would have that aside. If
Hmm.
someone doesn't have that and they're hearing you say this, I think that alleviates a lot of financial stress for people if you were to have that aside. How do you
Yeah.
suggest people start? Say they're starting from a base and they might have a month's salary saved away as their
Yeah.
savings. How might they start to build that 12-month reserve? Do you have any
Yeah.
tips?
Yeah. So part of what we like to get clients into the routine of doing is when they get paid, when they receive their weekly wage or fortnightly, monthly, however frequently, or they take drawings from their business, however
Mm,
which way they receive their income, is that they get into a routine of moving money into different bank accounts when those funds arise,
hmm.
right? So um, each time you get paid, it'd be nice to see a set amount moved across into the cash buffer account. For business owners, we often talk about holding separate amounts in a different bank account to meet tax-related
Mm,
expenses, income tax, BAS, that sort of thing.
yep.
I think that works really well. If if they've got a desire to add some investments into the mix, maybe they could set up the same sort of routine at an investment level.
Mm,
Um, I think with a lot of this sort of stuff, it can feel a little bit overwhelming when you start from, a baseline with a goal to try and get there.
yeah.
The first thing would be to not put any time sensitivity around it, right?
Mm,
We're not trying to solve this tomorrow,
yeah.
right? So if we need to give ourselves a 2-year runway to achieve that, that's great. Let's
Yeah.
do it anyway. Just break it down into manageable amounts. Work out what that number is. What is that 1 year's worth of living expenses? Put a number on it, and then
Hmm.
bring it back to what's a weekly or monthly target that we need to aim to move across into that separate safe haven cash buffer.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love that you suggest giving yourself grace on time frame because I think sometimes we expect to have everything done tomorrow. Like we're like, we've got to have this amount tomorrow, and you can add a lot of stress to yourself. But simply stepping it back, figuring out what you can put in every month. And if that takes 2 to 3, even 4 years to get there, that's okay because you're still growing the account
That's
every
right.
single month.
Yep.
So you're still progressing towards that goal. And I think, we can be in such a hurry to do things. We have such an instant gratification culture that allowing yourself the grace to take the time you need, because I think sometimes the mindset, I guess to your point of, oh, it's going to take too long to get there, can sometimes stop us from starting altogether.
Yeah. There's a really good saying that one of my mentors often says to me is even though, right?
Mm,
And the context for a lot of our conversations is even though this is hard or it's going to take a long time to achieve that, I'm going to start anyway.
mm,
So even though I feel like I'm a long way away from achieving that cash buffer goal, the sooner I start, the better.
mm.
Or even though it's going to take some time, it's still going to be meaningful from a peace of mind element for our family if we start working away at it slowly but surely.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's good. Again, giving yourself grace around it as well.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about sort of managing for financial stress, but it can put a lot of strain on relationships. You see this a lot. It can be the number one factor I've seen in some studies of strain on relationships, whether it's partners, family, friends, whomever. What are some
Hmm.
healthy ways you think people can approach financial conversations in their personal lives?
I think a lot of the time we don't talk about it enough. It's
Mm,
probably the starting point. So, let's create an environment, whether that you mentioned a financial date earlier, maybe it's, once a month or once a quarter. I'd encourage monthly that we get together, put something fun around it, whether it's going out for dinner or whatever it is,
mm,
and start some conversations about how, we work together as a unit from a lens around money,
mm,
right? So a good starting point might be, where are we trying to get to in the future?
yeah.
What does a great life look like for us in the future? Let's get really clear about that. And then let's create an environment where we can have some challenging conversations at times and be
Mm,
honest, um, and talk through what our concerns are or our fears, and do it in a way that we don't have any judgment or blame associated with it.
mm,
I think we're, I think where some of this can rear its head is that oftentimes we don't create the environment to talk about these things until such a time that there's a stress event or
yeah.
pressure.
And then it's heightened, isn't it? Then there's
Everything's heightened.
emotion.
Yep. Oftentimes not a great result will come of that conversation in
Mm,
terms of, an agreed path forward. And um, so I think it's doing the groundwork up front and creating the environment for those sort of conversations.
I
If
think
you
it's
don't feel
important.
like you can just have those conversations one on one, get someone to help as a
Mm.
facilitator.
It's a great suggestion, actually, because I guess sometimes people don't know what they don't know as well. What are even the things that we sit down and talk about if we had a financial date? Like, what do
Yep.
we do? And I think you made a great suggestion around starting with what are our long term goals, and then you mentioned earlier what do we value? Like, what is our rich life? And those are probably two things to get really solid on in
Hmm.
your important relationships where there's a shared money. I
Yeah,
guess.
we want a shared future vision for the future, right?
Mm,
We want to agree what works well for us as a team and what doesn't.
yeah.
Um, the more we can create, agreed context around those sorts of things, a lot of these, issues or fears seem to dissipate, I think.
Mm,
Um, and if I find that conversations about the future are more manageable for people, conversations about the right now without a context about where we're trying to get to and what do we agree is a good outcome versus a bad. Uh, there tends to be blame and judgment down on the conversation about now if there's no bigger context about where we're trying to get to in the future.
yeah, having that, I guess, lighthouse position that you're working towards, I think makes the current conversations easier because you can always take
Yeah,
it back to that. It becomes less personal or feels like less of an attack and more, hold on, we've agreed this is where we're going to, and maybe this is not serving that.
yeah, and maybe it's also walking into those conversations with a team mindset.
Mm,
So it's we, not me. So, what do we need out of this conversation to both feel heard, and that we're getting some progress and we're on the right path here?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, going in as a team. Why do you think, Bart, there is such a stigma or a difficulty or a taboo of talking about money, or why do people struggle with it?
I think there's some elements around. Um, I think there's some cultural elements in here. I think there's some um, different beliefs of previous generations, perhaps,
Mm,
around whose responsibility is to do what in the household.
yeah.
You've got a breadwinner, and then you've got someone that might be responsible for other elements in the house, raising kids, etc., etc. Um, I don't. I think all of those sorts of things might point towards a path where people find money as an uncomfortable element in the whole scheme of their life.
Mm,
Um, the truth is, I really don't think it is anymore. I think avoiding it is just going to create more stress for everyone.
yeah.
The sooner we bring it to a head and talk and agree on certain things, I think it just fits into a really healthy life and a healthy relationship.
I agree with you. I always refer to money as a value exchange. I always just think about it as an exchange in value. You're
Hmm.
putting cash aside, and the value that you might be getting back would be a more comfortable retirement, or the value that you're getting back might be a holiday for you, whatever it is. But I always just view it as a value exchange. And I try to think of it is if I feel like the value, the dollar value that I'm putting towards something is equal to the value I'm getting back from it, then it really is just that exchange.
Yeah, it's a great way to think about it. That's exactly what it is, to be honest. But oftentimes we don't necessarily naturally see it that way.
I think it's for me can take the emotion out of it, like you can just sort of look at it a little bit more objectively.
For sure.
We often hear about the importance of long term planning. We sort of mentioned retirement planning a moment ago. It can feel overwhelming, though, and there's certainly a balance between planning for the future, but then also enjoying life now. And I think, you've got all this rhetoric online, YOLO, live your life now versus, plan for the future. Do you think people can navigate the tension in a way that supports their overall well-being between planning for the future and being comfortable, but also enjoying life in the moment?
I'm sort of leaning back to that even though concept again. Even
Mm,
though it's overwhelming to plan for the future at times, I still think any plan for the future is better than no plan for the future. So
mm,
lean in. It is uncomfortable at times, but do it anyway.
yeah.
Start simple. Start with one goal. Could be, we want to have our dream home,
Mm,
or we do want to get to a point at some point in the future where we don't have to work anymore. We choose to work if we want to,
yeah.
right? Just start with that and then just build backwards from there.
Mm,
Um, Break it into steps. What can we do each year, each month to sort of make that happen? I'm a big fan of visual tools to try and see progress.
mm,
Um, and I think we already touched on this, but get some help around you,
yeah.
right? If this is a natural space where analysis paralysis sits for you,
Mm,
let's let's get some help around you that you know that might be their natural strength around helping us work through a plan around long-term planning and how do we achieve our goals for the future.
mm.
Get the right support network around you.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I am a big fan of getting the people who can help you, who are experts, and lean in. I like to understand everything, but it doesn't
Yeah.
always mean that I'm able to look at my own situation objectively and be able to think of things that that other person might be able to think about. What's your thoughts on that philosophy of, the YOLO, book the trip, buy the bag, all those sorts of things, as
Mhm.
compared with long-term planning? How do you sort of navigate that tension in your world or with your clients around
Yeah.
enjoying life and spending money now versus planning for the future?
I think every good plan needs to have flexibility to allow for opportunities that present in the short term.
Mm,
Like a dream trip pops up that we've wanted to do forever.
yeah.
Um, you want a plan to be flexible enough to allow those sorts of things with, with, but we need to understand what's the trade-off,
Yeah.
right? So in an ideal setting, we've got a game plan that allows us to live the life we want today, whilst also allowing us to achieve our longer term goals.
Mm,
So rather than feeling like we're constantly trading off one to the other, if we get the right plan around us with the right approach and the right people around us, why can't we have both?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sometimes there's a conversation there about what are you willing to give up to get what you want. Some
Mm,
people are willing to trade off short term, goals that they have to get their longer term and vice versa. I think it's just the more the plan allows for us to achieve all of those important things, the better.
yep. Yeah,
Because otherwise we
absolutely.
won't work towards the plan.
Yes, yeah, if there's yeah, exactly. And I think it's even like with people following diets, right? To take it back to something like that. The more rigid and strict it is, the more likely you're going to be to have an all or nothing mentality, whereas if you can have a little bit of flexibility in it, then you're likely to be able to stick to it for the long term.
You need to have flexibility within the plan, otherwise it just I think is not going to work long term.
And I think too, coming back to that, what is your rich life and
Yep.
figuring out what that is. And then those are the things you might be willing to make your trade offs for. Like for Liam and I, overseas travel is our rich. We love going overseas and experiencing different cultures. And so every year, we make sure we budget in an overseas holiday. That's something that's very important to us, for ourselves, for our relationship, for culture. And so that's something that's non-negotiable. But then there are other things that are not as important to us. So we just, I don't care about a fancy car or things like, so we just make those trade-offs based on what our values are towards what a rich life is for us.
That's a fantastic example. I think we all have elements in our lives that are non-negotiables, and then there's elements that we just don't care that much about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, you could probably save some money by having a less expensive car to allow us to do more of the things that actually fill our cup.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. From your perspective, what's one simple thing that you believe could help someone improve their financial well-being, no matter where they're starting from?
One thing, and
You can have more than one if you want, Bart. If there's a
okay,
handful that you want
yeah.
to go for, I'll allow that.
Um, I for this first part to probably just acknowledge that this is hard. There's going
Mm,
to be times where all of this balance and that sort of stuff, and where finance sits into all this, is a challenge. It is hard,
mm,
right? So probably don't beat yourself up on an ongoing basis because that's not helping anything.
mm,
Um, I think constantly bringing yourself back to the question about what brings me the most value, um, and like spending intentionally, not
mm.
impulsively, I
Yeah,
think is a huge piece of this puzzle here.
yeah.
I think there's, you know, every good plan needs to allow us for flexibility to do, what's important for us now, but also allow for the future.
Mm.
Otherwise, we keep circling back, but we're not going to stick to a plan that just doesn't work for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other habits that you think are important that someone should start to implement to help improve their financial well-being?
Um, I do like that one around each time you get paid to move money into different bank accounts. I think that's hugely powerful to know which, in our bank account, what we've got left to live and what money is
Mm,
set aside for future goals and what money is set aside for investing and that sort of thing. The more clarity we have around what's negotiable about what we can utilize in the short term versus what's set aside for a family trip that we've organised or whatever that goal may be, the more comfortable we'll be.
I think it's true. I love the multiple bank accounts idea. There's a lot of sort of financial planning books and things like that that
Yep.
suggest that as well.
Yep.
I do the same. My tax plan,
Yep.
investments,
Yep.
savings, holiday, whatever that is. So that when you're looking at your account, you know exactly what it is you have to spend. And I guess
Yep.
to your point, if you're choosing to take money out of one of those other accounts, you know what the trade-off is. The trade-off
You
is
know the
either
trade-off.
your buffer,
Yep.
it's your family holiday, whatever that account is you're taking from. The trade-off's very clear because you know what the money's allocated to.
Absolutely. This is a concept that should be utilised more in business as well. I
Mm,
think it's well known in a personal sense, but the multiple bank accounts in a business lens is hugely important too. Get
mm,
some money in a separate account for tax. Get some money in a separate account for, you know, new purchases that you've got in mind for the business in the future.
mm,
Or that I want to create a cash buffer because I want to bring in a new team member, but I know to do that, it's going to take some time to fund that in,
mm.
right? So the more we can normalize that across all elements of our life, the better, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's funny because initially I thought when I started that, I was like, oh God, it's so like I've got to set up all these accounts and I've got to do all this stuff. And I can totally understand how people might think that that feels overwhelming at the start, that it's like more
Yep.
complicated. But then the more that you can automate everything through even direct debits from that main account, particularly if you're paid PAYG, you know the day that your pay is coming in.
Yeah.
So just automate. I always suggest automate whatever payments you can out to each of those accounts so you don't actually even have to do it or think about it.
Absolutely. There's even like, with certain bigger expenses that arrive on an annual basis, it's nice to know that you got money set aside to cover
Mm,
those costs, right?
yeah.
Rather than feeling like we're trying to scratch around and get money together to meet them when they fall due. somehow, I don't know how this works, but they all have a tendency to arrive around the same sort of time.
Always. Why is
Yeah,
that, Bart?
I know. Smarter people than I will work out how do you move them out and stage them over the year, but
Yeah.
it just feels like they all seem to circle in at one time.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's a juggle, but the more you create the structures and the systems around you, the easier it is to manage.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of work up front to set that up. And then once it's done, it's done. Um,
And then just keep monitoring over time, right? Things will
mm,
change. So, we need to be able to update those regular savings plan to suit for us rather than set and forget and we're stuck with a system we had 5 years ago that doesn't work for us anymore. Needs to be
yeah.
able to move and evolve with our situation.
It's a good shout there, but because too, what might happen is your income might increase over time. So you can actually save more because what I used to see is the more people would earn, the more they would spend rather than
Yep.
keeping their lifestyle the same and then having more for savings or investment or things like that. So, yeah, checking
Yeah,
in.
and cost of living is a constant conversation now. Everything is dearer than it used to be. So the plan needs to allow us to work within it rather than, feel constrained and stuck.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just went to IGA a moment ago and it was $50 for a tiny bag of groceries. So I was like, my God, this is outrageous. But to your point, I can't control that. I can control the way I manage my finances
That's
to
right.
allow for that.
We can't control what the inflation looks like on the cost of goods.
Mm,
We can control our relationship with what comes through the door and where we value spending money.
yeah.
Um, and how we choose to, process some of those challenges that we receive over time.
Yeah, absolutely. You have a lot of wisdom to share, Bart. If there's one piece of wisdom about money, just your sort of, I guess, your number one mindset or your philosophy, or is there one thing that you really live by that you think truly brings about financial well-being?
I'm going to borrow one because
Okay.
it's not my wisdom. And it's, if it's to be, it's up to me.
Mm,
Right. So, in all elements of life, I think this is true. So, it's the lesson is teaching around going and getting what you're after, opposed to waiting for things to come to you.
mm,
So with the context of financial well-being, it's around, lean in, work out what you want your future to look like.
mm,
Get clear around it. Who's with you? Where are you living? What does a great life look like? What are we doing when we're not at work? How much are we working? All these sorts of things are important to understand.
mm,
Um, then we need to bring it back to something that's measurable that we can try and get a plan in place around this. What does that look like? Who do I need as part of my support network to help bring about that life?
mm,
Right. So the more we can lean in and understand where we're trying to get to, the easier it is to bring it back into actionable steps that we can apply on a monthly basis or a weekly basis.
mm.
So I'm a big advocate for that one liner of if it's to be, it's up to me.
I think that is true for financial well-being, but also everything else in life. But, I'm a huge believer in self-efficacy. And I think the more that we can realize that things are within our hands, they're not always going to be easy, but that we can make changes. And I think the other thing I'd overlay to what you said is grace and patience. That we might start taking steps and we might not see the outcomes for longer than we hope, but
Yep,
that as long as you're making those steps towards it, it's ultimately going to lead to a great outcome.
for sure. There's a great, and I'll butcher this, but they sort of talk about this concept that if you shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you're still going to reach the stars.
Yes.
Right. So I'm still a big advocate for a plan, whether it's going to evolve not over time.
Mm.
Still better to have a plan and be making progress in some direction than never putting a plan in place at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're just going quote for quote here, but I think it was Michael Jordan says is that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take as well. And
Yeah,
so if we're not giving it a go and trying, then we're not going to get ourselves out of it or get ourselves towards our financial goals. So just having that conversation, starting with what makes a rich life, and then sort of stepping backwards and putting a plan in place.
Absolutely. I think that's, there's a bit of a recipe for success in there around this financial well-being piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you shared so many bits of wisdom today, Bart. I am so appreciative of your time. And I think you've really helped to demystify what can be a confusing or challenging topic for people or overwhelming. And so I think that that's been super helpful. Do you have any book recommendations on finances?
Yeah. Um, a lot of them are business related. I hope that's okay.
Of course.
Um, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber is a great book. I think you and I might have talked about that
Yes.
before.
Yeah.
Um, there's a book called Traction by Gino Wickman, is fantastic. That teaches the entrepreneurial operating system, which is a great way that you can sort of self-implement running a really successful strategy into your business around how you operate.
Mm. The other one that I do want to add to it is The Psychology of Money. It's
Yep,
it's almost like the Bible for our thinking around money. So it's not necessarily around financial planning, but more about money mindset and
yep,
why we think we need to spend money on things that might not be within our own values, and sort of how to come back to your own values. So that's another
fantastic.
one.
I might
Yeah,
have to load that up as an audiobook for my travels.
it's a good one.
Probably saved on my list to read. Haven't got there yet.
It's I think it's sold millions and millions of copies, that
Mm,
one. It's just one of those sort of Bibles around money. And then Ramit Sethi was the other one who I mentioned about Your Rich Life. I can't remember what the name
yep,
of the book is, but I'll put it in the show notes as well. I've listened to him on a number of podcasts, and that mindset around really figuring out your rich life as an individual, not what society says is a rich life. I think that's a good
yep.
mindset one too.
I just thought of one other is Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell.
Oh, yes, excellent book.
I think I might have talked to you about that another time too, Ange.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Bart. I feel like you have demystified so much and shared some really great tips along the way. So thank you. And I hope everyone's enjoyed listening.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me on Work and Wellness. If today's episode resonated with you, remember, someone in your network might need to hear this too. Share it with a colleague or friend who could use these insights. I'd love to keep the conversation going, so find us on Instagram at Mind Your Grit, where we share daily tips and continue these discussions. And if you found value in today's episode, please take time to rate and review the show. It makes such a huge difference and helps other people discover conversations they might really need. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Each week, we're building a community of people who believe that success and well-being go hand in hand. You can find the notes, resources, and links from today's episode at mindyourgrit.com. This is Work and Wellness with Ange Davis. Your work matters, your wellness matters, and this is where it all comes together. See you next week.